honored to introduce our three guest speakers to discuss the theme of women's rights movements, waves and divisions. Stephanie Collingwood Williams. Stephanie is an anthropologist, ex-social worker, trainer, and consultant. She is an expert in anti-racism, intersectionality, climate justice, feminism, queerness, and biraciality. Stephanie was raised in Ghana and studied in the Netherlands and Belgium, where she has been involved with various climate justice and anti-racist movements. Marwa Azelmat. Marwa is a feminist and public policy expert with expertise in technology for gender equality and social justice. She works as a digital rights expert at RNW Media and is a member of the UN Women's Gender Innovation Advisory Council for Arab States. Marwa's work was featured in the African Union UN Book as one of the 20 most outstanding contributions to the WPS field. Shaima Taisich. Shaima is a professional, certified coach, self-care trainer, and family and relationships counselor. After more than 16 years of diverse experience in different fields between corporations, NGOs, training, and coaching, she founded Dreamcatcher Academy to support others in finding their best version, reaching their goals, being authentic, being more connected to themselves, improving their relationships, and having better lives. And finally, our moderator, Nosra Ayari. Nosra is the former CEO, MENA of Lead Initiative. She is a regular speaker at Human Rights International conferences with more than 20 years of experience in the international development field. She is a gender equality advocate with the belief that working on reaching an inclusive society in tackling equality issues is the best approach to reach gender equality.
Welcome everyone to this new edition of the WOMENTUM Digital Saloon. Our digital saloon today is titled Women's Rights Movements, Waves and Divisions. We have chosen this subject because until today, we have seen so many waves of feminism. Today, we call them 4 waves of feminism. We have seen more than 7 decades of activism for gender equality, yet we haven't reached that goal yet. So that's why we ask ourselves what's going on, what has been a success, what have been the failures. To discuss this topic, we have today with us 3 brilliant guest speakers. We have Stephanie Collingwood. Stephanie is Belgian and Ghanaian. She's an anthropologist, expert in anti-racism, intersectionality, climate justice, and feminism. We have with us Marwa Azelmat from Morocco. She's a feminist and public policy expert in technology for gender equality and social justice. And we have with us Shaima Taisir. Shaima, she's a feminist, holistic self-care facilitator and founder of Dreamcatcher Academy. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us. And we will stop for 1 minute to watch the trailer.
Through the everlasting fight for gender equality, the feminist movement has evolved through 4 powerful waves, 4 different planes and contexts. The first wave started from the mid-19th to the early 20th century and is mainly linked to the demand for suffrage. The second wave of feminism emphasized autonomy, women's rights, fair wages, and ending objectification. The third wave, influenced by post-colonial thinking, aimed to rectify the exclusion of women of color and emphasize intersectionality. A fourth wave is now emerging, with a broader level of intersectionality and inclusion for women and people of all genders. In the 10th edition of the WOMENTUM Digital Saloon, we will give the floor to our high-level guests to embark on a journey through the dynamic landscape of feminism, exploring its evolution across 4 distinct waves. As we delve into the rich tapestry of women's history and activism, we'll unveil the key milestones and ideologies that have shaped each wave. Join us in this captivating talk as we dive deep into the differences and the common thread that ties these waves together, and what today's feminism looks like.
Welcome back. So I would like to start the discussion with Stephanie. So Stephanie, today, when we talk about feminism, we talk for so many cases, and I can still hear it and see it in international fora, that we talk about feminism as gender equality and feminism as women and men, without really looking at the inclusivity, the intersectionality. So, what are your thoughts about this?
Thank you. So what I think about this, well, I also think about the fact of when do we identify the wave starting? Because, well, when we think about feminism, we often think about white feminism and, the first wave and the second wave and so on, kind of defined from like a Western standpoint. So to think about feminism in a more broader stance would also be to recognize different shapes of feminism that are non-Western, but also to think about like how feminism in itself was not always something that people could relate to. For example, me growing up, I didn't see myself as a feminist because when I looked at feminist movements, it was more like suffragettes and so on. So it wasn't really something that I saw myself being a part of as being like a brown woman. It wasn't something that I felt like I was a feminist in the same way. So I think that's something to think about when it comes to inclusivity, but also to think about how feminism has excluded. When I talk about feminism, I'm talking more about like white feminism, how it has excluded different types of women, that have a certain, for example, look. That could be race. It could also be class elements that are also, women of a certain class being the one at the forefront, but also when it comes to disability, when it comes to other LGBTQ rights and so on. So I think feminism can be something that's more inclusive and that we're still working on today when it comes to what is feminism, for who is feminism, and where do we want to go to as a movement, and seeing this as a movement in which different people can also have their stance and also be recognized as being part of this movement as such. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie. So here you bring the question of the lack of inclusivity, from what I hear from what you're saying, in the sense that until today, there is still a lack of inclusivity at looking at the objective of reaching gender equality and feminism. Do you agree, Marwa, with like what Stephanie has said? What are like also your impressions and your take on this?
Yeah, of course. I think feminism takes a lot of meaning in different contexts, and it's not really related to specific environments per se, because at the end of the day, it has to be rooted in its own context. And as much as we praise feminism, there are many anti-rights groups that don't really see that feminism is really something good or something progressive or something that is actually conducive to the development of societies. And what I want to say is that as much as we see it from a certain standpoint, it doesn't make much more sense to different people across different walks of life. But of course, there is a certain stereotype of being feminist as in being um, privileged, as in being white, as in being maybe even senior, as in being from a certain class, from a certain social status. Um, Especially, like just now we're speaking English. Um, and we're mostly from the global south, so there is a certain correlation um, between languages and knowledge and class and ethnicity, etc., etc. I don't want to repeat what Stephanie said, but I just want to say that it's not univocal, and it doesn't have to be. It's not what I see as right and what another person sees as wrong, but it's really about how we can make sure that society reaches its full potential without missing out on the ones that don't have the same abilities as others and the same rights as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Marwa. So here also you are kind of saying that we should look not only about inclusivity from a lens of like class and race, but also looking more also to the kind of vulnerable communities and also how to say it, like difference, right? Okay, so here, okay, so we heard from you, you talked about the global south, I'm not a fan of the global south as a word because also it's a little bit of a political insinuation, and like it's really bombarded with a lot of labels. But like also I go back to Shaima, and coming from the south. What are also your takes on this? Like how do you look at like gender equality today when it comes to the different achievements of the different waves of feminism?
Okay, hi everybody. Actually, I'm still thinking about two things. First, what is the definition of feminism, and what is the definition of gender equality? How we want it to be? What's gender equality looks like? Gender equality, it's about the same percentage of voting, so it's a political side. Gender equality is in economics. Gender equality is in social lives. So I think we need to revisit the definitions about feminism itself, than about gender equality, or about whatever we want from the movement itself. So for myself, I can't say that, yes, we reached gender equality, even in Egypt or in another country. So this is what came to my mind once you asked me. So
Okay. Great,
yeah.
thank you so much, Shaima. So how would you define gender equality yourself? If you look at today, I mean, we should go back to the definition of what gender equality is. So what is your own definition today of gender equality as a feminist?
Yeah, from my perspective, gender equality is to have the same rights for all the, I don't want to liberalize, but for women, queer, men, LGBTQR, whatever, in all aspects life, politics, economics, whatever, labor, all. This is gender equality from my point of view. To be on the same level of what to say, meeting our needs, whatever needs is, to have the same rights. This is what I think about it as a feminist, because you said that I'm a feminist. Okay, I hate labels, but this is gender equality from my point of view.
Thank you so much, Shaima.
50-50, like they said.
Thank you so much, Shaima. So here, like, we get back to the point of inclusivity, and what I hear from the three of you is that, like, we're missing out on inclusivity as, like, I mean, a conclusion from this first interaction, which brings me to, like, that clash between, if we might call it today, the fourth wave of feminism, and also the third wave of feminism. And maybe also previous waves, but like maybe in my opinion, but also you give me yours. The question of intersectionality has started being raised during the third wave, end of the third wave of feminism, and then today it's really very, very prominent as like intersectionality, how we define ourselves as people, class, race, especially like in a world much more and more globalized with digitalization, right? So, I mean, why do you think, I mean, and also I'll give the floor to anyone to intervene. You can like, I mean, start or feel free also who wants to respond to this question. Why do you think intersectionality was never brought up, I mean, before in previous waves? If I might say, I mean, first and second wave and early third wave. Yeah, Stephanie, I think you want to say something here.
Yeah, so intersectionality is now seen as new, but it really isn't, because it was defined by Kimberly Crenshaw more than 20 years ago. But she was inspired by actually Black feminists in the United States even before, but that weren't in like the academic field. So I think this has to do again with like recognizing it now after like movements of like people that are racialized standing up. So now it being more relevant after Black Lives Matter movement and so on, people realizing that we're not inclusive enough. And then specifically talking more about like the white Western world not being inclusive enough. So I think that's where it comes from, but it also, again, only is coming up now because of the dehumanization of women of color that has been taking place in the past. So women of color were not always seen as women in the same way that white women were women, because of course, white women in the slave trade, transatlantic, and so on were also slave owners. So they were seen as more women than other women. Also, then you see the fact of like, Black women specifically having to be slaves to white women, them not being women enough because them again being like a place of like reproducing, so kind of them having to like produce slaves and so on, so they weren't seen as human, and also not seen as women because woman was human and dehuman was like, dehumanization wasn't even human, so you couldn't even be a woman at that point. So I think that has to do with why it's only being recognized now, although it is already like a concept that is older and they're newer concept right now. So I think it takes a while before Western feminism recognizes other forms of feminism. And to go back on what the two other speakers said, I think this idea of freeing women is also very much a Western concept, as we see now, like in France, this idea of like people not being allowed, especially young girls, not being around to wear like long dresses, abayas at school. So them seeing it like, as like being a religious Muslim, being something oppressive, and that the West should save them from, their identities. So there we see this Western feminism that kind of has to save brown women that have been marginalized by the West. Historically, we could also talk about Japan and so on, but it's really specific. So I think this idea of freeing women from, like other cultures that are non-Western is also something that has to do with like this racism that is present within like white feminism, but also this fact that like, for example, when we looked at the dollar, I think it was like a report that I saw from 2 years ago, where like a white woman was still earning more than a Black woman, more than a Latina woman, and so on. So there's also like inequality when it comes to womanhood. And I think that even the definition of like feminism as we see it in first and third wave and so on is very like capitalist. It's very like girl boss feminism, where like we're aspiring to be, capitalist as well. And I think even capitalism and patriarchy is very intertwined. So it kind of puts questions to, is our liberation again defined by those that have been classic oppressors, and is our goal to become them as well? And what system are we ultimately fighting for? Yeah, that was me talking a lot, but yeah, to kind of give ideas that I have.
Please talk as much as you can. Very important all what you're saying. A lot of interventions in relation to, again, the question of race, the question of, intersectionality. It existed before, but it's much more prominent now. Marwa, I would like to hear more about this from your own standpoint.
Yeah. I think for me, I was just thinking a little bit, like just more internally when Stephanie was speaking. And I guess we're now facing power dynamics at a more larger spectrum, because before women couldn't even vote. They were still living under colonization. It was it was much more restricted for them to get allowed space, a civic, political, cultural space than now. But then, of course, after the surge of feminism and the fight against really basic human rights, after the UN Human Rights Convention, of course, and the whole international framework, um, uh, we've experienced much more of patriarchy than we've actually conceived before. And I guess the fact that when the United Nations released the Millennium Development Goals, and then following that, the Sustainable Development Goals, we started seeing development at different intersections with migration, climate justice, gender justice, peace building, economic opportunities, health, and so on and so forth. So the concept of power dynamics have been much more elaborated and the fight against these historical structures that were limiting and restricting women in all their diversity took a much more deeper meaning. And the fact that we still, of course, facing the racial fight, we're still facing the border control, which is one of the most patriarchal thing on earth. For me, at least, this is something that you can really experience when you have when you come from a certain nation and you're not allowed a certain mobility just on the grounds of being X, Y, Z. And of course, going through the fourth wave with social media, which has even more expanded our thinking. So it was still restricted to the elites who were reading newspapers. Now it's much more accessible. The information about oppression is much more accessible. You can see it, you can feel it, you can be enraged and outraged just online from a certain social media post that would really make you feel oppressed just because you look like that person who has been oppressed, or you come from the same ethnicity, or you can actually experience what they felt and what they've encountered. And that's why I think the conversation has altered, because we can relate. It's no more a question of echo chambers, because before it was just the elites of women, rich women, politician women, women coming from generational wealth and families of diplomatic families and families of politicians who could afford to be part of these spaces. But after that, we've seen normal women taking on the stage and sharing with us their impression of what it means. And then we were like, okay, this is what it means for me as a North African. This is what it means for me as a white, but still Eastern European, not Western European, because it's different. So I do feel that this fourth wave has helped give much more depth and meaning to the experience of oppression, and of course to unleashing your own expression, but also working at different crossroads of development, as I said, with the SDGs and before the NDGs, etc.
Brilliant analysis, Marwa. Thank you. Shaima, so what would you like to add? Maybe also, I mean, I'm not labeling you here, but just also, I'm not labeling you, but I think you've lived more the third wave feminism since its start. I'm not giving your age.
No, it's okay.
But also,
I'm 48, by the way.
So how would you assess that also, like the question of intersectionality, the differences between fourth and third wave? So yeah, please.
Actually, while you were discussing things, just have like flashes on my head. Okay, we are trying to bring things from the previous waves like intersectionality. So first, we have to think how the intersectionality was applied before, okay? And now, how are we gonna apply it or use it? Because while we're talking, okay, there is still, we didn't reach the total intersectionality. This is from my point of view, because today, like before, there is differences between women, Black women, white women, and don't tell me that we are on the same page, we are equal. No, we are not. They are still a little bit differences. When Marwa was talking about patriarchal, it's an approach. And it came to my mind that also women are applying patriarchal approach on the other women. So the fifth the force waves or whatever should take a step back and start to evaluate where we are, how we want to apply things. Are we trying to elaborate the fourth wave, or we're gonna start the fifth one, because it's not there is no catalog, because waves, the gap between waves actually started to decrease. So between the first one and the second one have 15 years, between the second one and the third one, 8 years. So are we about to have a fifth one, more mindfulness, more mindful, digitalized, or more intersectional, more decentralization, that see things in depth and find the meaning behind what we are asking for? We have to take a step back and ask ourselves what we really want. Equality, or just gender equality, intersectionality, or decentralizations? This million of questions came to my mind while I'm listening to Stephanie and Marwa. So are we about to start the fifth one?
Just to react to what you're saying, I think what Marwa said that was really important is also the element of context, and what the goals are, what people want and so on. Because I think that us talking like within like first and second, we're still very much talking, from like a specific kind of feminism. And I think we could almost put like another feminism next to it, like feminism of like women in Middle East, feminism of women in like, African diaspora and so on. So I think there would be many more, and that we're really like kind of in the frame of like Western feminism. So I think that's also interesting to explore like those elements. And I think what you were saying, Shaima, was a lot about like past and present, but I think that it's something that is like continuously evolving in a sense, because even now there's rights that we thought that we had, like for example rights on like your body, or rights to vote, rights to like drive and so on, even like abortion and so on, that are still being like taken away. So I think it's not really something that only moves forward, but always also moves back and forth in a sense, because it's not because rights were achieved that they're going to be achieved forever, because it's constantly being, challenged in a way. So I think even when we're looking forward, there's like a constant of like, what can we do better? And I think intersectionality in a sense is just a lens and a tool to look at things, but it doesn't mean that everyone has to have, all the same identities, because everyone has different identities, and those need to be recognized and understood, like within, like a context. For example, in Belgium, I'm like I'm mixed race person, but then I'm seen more as like a Black person here, versus like if I'm in Ghana, then I'm seen as more light skinned. So everything has to do with context. Not that that's important, but just to show how, depending on where we are, the conversations will vary. And I think it's interesting to think about how the fact that when women kind of work, now again we're talking about like Western women more worked like during World War I, that then they were also seen as like more, like respectable, because they were taking up jobs that were formerly men's jobs. So just to say that I think that it's more layered than just only the waves, but where we're going, I think, is, I don't know if it will be online or offline, but I think even online and offline are kind of both intertwined, because often when it's like online, it's also because there's things happening in the real world, but then people kind of react to it. For example, what we saw like happen when it came to like women being killed because of them showing their hair, it was in real life, and then also took on a global platform through online. But it doesn't mean that those two elements will influence each other more and more, I think. And I think Marwa would be the person to talk about this more specifically. But I think it's like the layers of it are only evolving, and the language through which we understand and recognize oppression is also growing. Because I think if we talk about, what women were fighting for maybe 20 years ago, that would have been different than what we're fighting for today. But because of language continuously evolving, we also recognize patterns of what is happening better. For example, when I learned the word gaslighting, it was something I was experiencing, but I never knew what it was until there was a word. So I think also us creating words and so on kind of makes us feel, okay, this is a system and this is something that I'm experiencing individually. So I think it will be, more words, but also how does it relate to digital? And also how do we kind of make it more specific, like to this context and that context, and those are our goals, which can be different, but can all be feminist as well, because I think we recognize feminism as only if you're working and so on, but like a woman that is caring for her children and is like standing up for, her rights as well, maybe not on like a political level, is also a feminist to me. It's not only when it's like recognized on television that they're feminists. It can also be you being in the house and doing like classic chores could also be feminist if that's something that you're choosing to do and doesn't have to be like a specific kind of way of being a woman.
Sorry, Stephanie, I'm going to interrupt you here. Thank you so much. Very important elements, but also you're going forward to the discussion. We're coming to these questions. Okay, so thank you so much for bringing the question of the gaps and between the different waves, Shaima. Thank you also, Marwa and Stephanie, for bringing very important elements, which are digitalization and context. Context is very important for sure, which also bring us to global South feminism and elitism in feminism. So I want to ask a question in that. So like to an extent today, when you go to international fora, and I'm sure all of you have been participating in international fora, to what extent you feel that there is still that kind of north, I would say global north philosophy towards feminism versus the global south philosophy towards feminism, and kind of like who's lecturing the other and who's kind of like being submissive to like westernized ideals and then trying to apply them, but like they don't fit in such context. This is the first question. The follow-up question in relation to that, and I want you also to respond to both at the same time. To what extent digitalization was something positive or maybe something negative to feminism? Okay, so I would like to hear from you first, Marwa.
Yeah, it's quite two big questions. And of course, I'll just try to be very moderate in my thinking. I guess first we need a reality check. At the end of the day, we're mostly funded by northern governments for work in southern countries, right? So it's a reality that we cannot deny today. And who gives the money sets the tone. So as much as we'd like to believe that it's decolonized, still it's a lot of power to fund interventions in indeed global majority or global south countries by countries that have their own history of colonialism and certain power structures and certain beliefs and but also of course the white savior complex and as you said, who's lecturing the other. I wouldn't say that they're specifically lecturing us, but I would say that it's indeed a dynamic that's still playing out and that we're still trying to understand. We're still trying to crack the code and see how we can make the balance, especially within the last few years, last decade, with all the backlash against feminist groups, rights groups, vulnerable communities. and the shrinking of civic spaces in global majority countries, which has led, of course, local groups and grassroots communities to explore resources from external donors and other funders and funding resources as well. And of course, I'm talking specifically about the development industry, because this is very relevant to the conversation, how we can actually do the work without really being, fit to their own requirements and to their own specificities. And I'm sure that anyone here as an activist, as a, as leaders in the field have already experienced that from the restrictions in funding, from the language, from the jargon, from the reporting mechanisms, and so on and so forth. But from another end, our feminism is also quite elitist because the language is very hard to understand. And our language does not really speak to our own people, and we still lack solidarity between feminist groups because there is a lot of competitiveness, there is a lot of sense of like threats and who's doing what and where. And now we're having more conversations about intergenerational feminism. So there is a clash between the younger generation, the millennials, the Gen Z, the whatever. It's a lot of it's a lot of power dynamics, which of course has led to social media being the battleground, I would say, like the battlefield, where everyone is trying to showcase what they do, what are their, their achievements, their strengths. And it has become, for me, performative feminism, because for now, with all the need to have your own beautiful portfolio on social media and the need to showcase your impact stories and achievement and what it means for donors and what it means for the number of followers and what it means to have a large, subscription numbers. It has really pressured feminist groups to be more performative and to be more like just to talk the talk instead of walking the walk. So as much as it is very ideal to have social media as a space where we can breathe and say whatever we want, also not really whatever we want, but still it's more of a breather than offline and then in the real life. But I've come to experience instances where feminist groups are not really speaking truth to power because it has become so costly and it has become so of a burden to be your own authentic self on social media because of all the requirements that we have from governments, donors, and the international fora. It has become a real burden to stay in the group, to fit in. And in order to fit in, you have to be a specific person and you need to have a specific, profile. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Maro, for these very interesting insights. And they are very direct. I will leave it to Shaima and Stephanie to also add their insights on it, or like confirm, or also have different opinions. So we are running out of time, and we still have so many questions, so many things to discuss. So 2 minutes for you, Shaima, and then 2 minutes for you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just want to say, like a wrap up, we are still facing the dilemma between the space for the grassroots, NGOization, donors, and movement. Because I felt all the time that we have a lot to do, but we want to do it our own way, not the way of the donors. Okay, donors most of the time need numbers, and we need facts. We need results that benefit and be the women and their rights. So I think we still have a lot to work on as feminists, just to say to the donors that yani, our work, it's not only numbers. Our work is life, is different strategies. So look to the impact and the influence that we want, not how many women you teach, how many WHRDs receive the service. This is only what I came to my mind, what Marwa are talking about, the grassroots work and the donors.
Thank you, Shayma. Stephanie, any additional comments when it comes to this?
I agree with many things that Marwa said, especially when it came to like power dynamics repeating itself even between women in spaces, that are more international context. But also, I think when it comes to digitalization, that it can be something positive. But again, the questions are like, who's picked, who's the one that's going to have more following, who's the one that like answers to beauty standards, who's the one that speaks the language, that people can relate to most. So I think even when it comes to digitalization, we see the same dynamics.
So my final question is what I see today, and this is my own opinion, and also like I would like to hear yours, as the backlash on feminism, right? And like how today, being feminist is used as a punchline, or like a woman saying today I'm a feminist is used also as a stereotype, if I might say. It means that you are the strong, independent woman, like who cannot have like a normal, healthy relationship with men. We see also today, thanks to digitalization, or maybe because of digitalization, we see counter movements of male influencers calling back the patriarchy. We see also female influencers calling back the patriarchy and saying that men is no longer men and women is no longer are no longer women. So your thoughts on this? I would really like to hear your thoughts on this. And I'll start with Shayma. Shayma, 2 minutes, 2 minutes each. Okay.
Actually, when I said mindful feminism, I mean that I could be a feminist, a wife, a mother, and many things out of the independent, strong woman that it had a very, very bad use in Egypt. So I'm for all the Egyptian, or the most of the Egyptian people, that I'm the crazy woman, divorced, blah, 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 but I really thrive my life. I'm happy. I'm divorced because I wasn't in the relationship that I want. That's it. Not because I'm a feminist. On the other side, I am a very good mom. So they don't give themselves the space to see the picture. It's only they are seeing the feminist title or label. So I'm a feminist. I'm a desperate woman. yeah. What? I felt that Stephanie was shocked. So, but I think that we have to work on our mindset, or the society mindset. I could be a feminist and many other things. Feminist and happy and whatever.
Thank you, Sharima. Stephanie.
Yeah, it's a really hard question, I think, to answer, because there's many layers to what you asked. So I don't know. I think, yeah, there is a negative connotation of being a feminist because it is seen as, being strong, independent, and so on. And this can be threatening for, ideas of men and what they're supposed to be and their role as like classic protectors and so on. But I do think that like feminism actually gives an opportunity for men to be different and to be able to explore their emotions. And also, it could be like something that could free them as well. But I think there's a lot of like struggle of like what is being a man if now a woman doesn't need me, whereas I think that now if a woman and a man, in heteronormative relationships choose to be together, it could just be stronger because then it wouldn't be because I need you, I'm with you because I want to be with you. But I think there's sometimes a threat because men had to be, the provider, and that was their only role. So maybe they didn't have the opportunity to grow emotionally, and now women do want men that are also emotionally in tune and that can provide certain things. So I think men sometimes have a hard time having to become a new man that also takes up different roles, that also answer different things, and also works on themselves as an individual. What does it mean, to be a human generally and not only to be the provider, the strong one? Like, it's fine to also have those other emotions, but I think that really questions, the whole thing of like, what am I now and what am I supposed to be and what does this mean for me? So I think that's sometimes where this fear can come from that can be really it can be really toxic in many ways, but I think it does really push people to think more about what does it mean to express and be, and I think that sometimes can be challenging when we see all the podcasts of men hating women coming up, to be short.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Marwa.
I mean, I have a lot to say on this. I think, but I'll be quite, like straight to the point. I have a couple of like sort of bullet points. The first one is that currently feminism rejects intervention for rehabilitation for men. How can we also support men in the process of becoming feminist? And I have always been attacked during feminist conferences by feminists talking about this. They would always reject that process, which is something we need. We need prevention. We can no longer, like just rely on punitive approaches and criminalization because it's not helping us. It's not really helping the development of healthy societies. How can we help men become feminists without feeling threatened from both sides? The second point is that we see a lot of feminists just speaking about feminism as it's just about women, but it's the study of power dynamics. It's not about men versus women. It's really the study of power dynamics. If you go to India, societies are matriarchal. They're not patriarchal. It's really the woman who leads. So it's really another power dynamic study there. And the third point is that we're seeing a lot of feminists attacking male leaders that are really doing a great job. And in my life, I've also faced and experienced female leaders that are really toxic and that are really anti-intersectionality, racist, and classist, you name it. So I think we're currently, as we said, in a very competitive space of who would stay and who would lead the way. And, we've seen it with the Barbie movie. Not sure if you watched it, but it was like the fight between the Barbies and the Kens over who would lead. And of course, it sparked a lot of controversy. But it's really how it sounds currently. Who would lead without really caring about the ethics? Because for me, if I have a man leader who is feminist by heart, that's it. That's all I need. I don't need to know much more about his identity or his gender, etc. But I do feel that feminists now are very caring about the number of women in the room, the number of female leaders in the room. But is it conducive? If we now appoint 50 female leaders, would it really lead to what we want? So yeah, I mean, it's as I said, it's very competitive, and it's just about hunger for power. Who would lead, basically? Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Marwa. Thank you so much, the three of you, for this very interesting discussion that I've enjoyed myself. I think there's a lot to say, but we are limited by time. So this leaves us with our final messages space. So I'll give the space for each one of you to say a few words as final messages when it comes to women's rights movement, its waves and divisions. And also we have Stephanie want to give a message about the current situation in Ghana. Stephanie, I'll start with you, and then I move to Shaima, and then Marwa.
Will be shared afterwards. And I think if you would like to share information of what's going on in Ghana, because there's also very strict LGBTQ laws that are also being passed. I think this is also something that, that happens like in Uganda and so on, but there's many human rights violations that are going on. So if you would like to post about this and maybe share it, it would be nice. If the links will be shared afterwards. A second thing that I wanted to say was about the current refugee situation in Belgium. People are being put on the streets and so on. So that's the second link that I'm going to share afterwards, just to raise awareness of like human rights, because I think all of this always has to do with human rights issues fundamentally.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Shaima.
Sorry. I think after all this, we were about to think to revisit the definition of feminism and solidarity and what we really want. But I do believe that we will continue with the value of solidarity. Solidarity is a core value. As a feminist, we have to decide which role we want to play, each one. And I will inspire something from Marwa. We need to address the toxic feminism just to have a smooth journey and avoid a new roadblocks, which is the toxic feminism. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaima. Marwa?
Yeah, I think for me, it's, I guess, just a call for each and every one of us to really unlearn how we've been doing things just because maybe it seems right to certain standards. And the process of unlearning should be very much anchored in our feminist principles, how we can unlearn and detach from this toxicity, as Shaima said. And I guess the last thing is to really own our stories. It's our stories, it's our movements, it's our voices that we can trade off for certain like for certain amounts of money or certain privileges, because at the end of the day it's really our own voices that we should speak on behalf of.
Thank you, Marwa. Thank you so much, everyone. We had today with us three brilliant and successful speakers: Marwa Azelmat from Morocco, Stephanie Cullenwood from Ghana and Belgium, and Shaima Taysir from Egypt. Thank you again for being here, and I have personally enjoyed a lot this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nusa Ayari, CEO MENA of the LEAD Initiative.
And I'm Jörg Schäfer, founder and CEO Europe. Together,
We thank you for watching the Saloon.
and want to ask you to check out our YouTube channel and our website.
Stay tuned and do not hesitate to reach out to us.